We are familiar with quite a few trinities in English literature. I welcome you to English literature. Uh, to elaborate on it a little, for example, in post-colonialism, we talk about Said, Spivak, and Bhava. That is the trinity predominantly. And then in modern English literature, we talk about Pound, Eliot, and Yeats. Chronologically, Yeats, Pound, and Eliot. In post-structuralism, Laka, Foucault, Derrida. Similarly, in Indian writing in English, or rather Indian English novel, the trinity is Rajarao, Mulk Raj Anand, and R.K. Narayan. So today we'll talk about Mulk Raj Anand and discuss his novel The Untouchable, which was published in 1935, a very significant year in which, among other things, the Government of India Act was passed. Remember, India was then under the British. Now, if we talk about the three novelists' chosen area, Rajarao was more interested in the philosophical writings, Indian tradition and all, whereas Mulk Raj Anand is concerned with the opposite extreme side, that is the very lower and oppressed stratum of Indian society, which comprises basically what traditional Hindu society calls the untouchables. That is very unfortunate, very pathetic, and most inhuman, and all our sympathy should lie with them, and we should always try to stop whatever is going on to discriminate them from their legitimate human rights. Anyway, currently also, that infamous thing that has happened, I don't want to politicize by naming it. I am neither in favor nor against any political constituency. So as a humanist thinker, I am saying, so Dalits right over their own bodies also are not generally accepted by certain upper caste people. We should not generalize. It is very in anything it is difficult to generalize. But anyway, in certain parts of India, it is very prevalent, this practice of discrimination. I checked some of the talks before making this video. In one of those, it was said that it was. It's not that it was, it is actually. Basic human rights have been denied. Now, Mulk Raj Anand chose to represent them, give voice to the unprivileged, the real subalterns of Indian social system. And another important thing is he had a Marxist worldview. So kindly watch it along with my other videos on Marxism, especially third sem students. I have already shared with you that thing. Now, Untouchable, Mulk Raj Anand's Untouchable, is the story of the life, not life exactly, one day in the life of an Indian young sweeper called Bakha. By following closely the European prescription of unity of time and place, though not so much of action, the incidents that the novel depict take place within a single day. So this is a good edition of the text. Anyway, so in the early morning we find Bakha's father Laka, who is the head of the sweepers, and they live in a sweepers colony. In fact, sweepers means untouchables colony, and in fact with that the novel starts, that how the upper castes and upper classes of society have relegated them to oblivion by making them reside in a very remote corner of society and the fictional city Bulasha, but at the same time you cannot do away without their help. Now his father goads him to get up and says that you are lazy, you should go for walk and all that. And when it starts his day, there are certain authorial comments. It's a third person omniscient narrator, by the way. One comment is that, here I'll come to a problematic of colonialism, or rather anti-colonialism. From the Sahibs, Bakha has learned about the dignity of human beings. It is very ambiguous, because when we talk about the statement that I have made, when we talk about post-colonialism, especially anti-colonial rhetoric of post-colonialism, we castigate the colonizers for denying us human rights. But at the same time, they came as a great help and liberating force to those sections who were oppressed within our society. Because though there was racism or colonialism, casteism was not there in British Christian society, etc. So I would like to quote a sentence. The Tommies had treated him as a human being, and he had learned to think of himself as superior to his fellow outcasts. This single most important line of the novel, in my view, the Tommies, that is the Sahibs, had treated him as a human being, not as Dalit, not as outcast. You are a human, I am also human. So that was also the gift of colonialism, how much soever we resent that. Had the colonization not taken place, I think whatever development we have made in eliminating the caste structure and all, that also would not have happened. It is another matter that they oppressed us collectively, but that was in terms of colonialism. So even Gandhiji's movement, Ambedkar's movement, this kind of awareness. We say that it was not there in Vedic age and all that, it came after Manu Samhita, but that does not delete the fact that it was there in practicing society when the British came. All right, so now Bakha is there, so he is close contact with Sahib, and he is self-conscious, unlike other sweepers. They clean the toilet of human beings, human excreta, and then gradually the novel shows his activities for a single day. The model is also, apart from the European classical or neoclassical prescription, the model here is James Joyce's Ulysses. But then while Ulysses, in a way, it was published in 1922, Ulysses, and Mulkraj Anand's Untouchable in 1935, and Arnold was a well-accomplished English literature person. So he read that, but then he brought his own intervention. While in Ulysses, most of the things, though it is much more voluminous, are psychological, or you can say psychodynamics is at play. Here, things are there at the physical level too, though from time to time we are made acquainted with, or we are made to interact with Bakha's mental thought, which the author provides us with. And throughout the day, except the Sahibs and one person called Charan Singh, most people, they treat him with hatred. They practice untouchability wherever and whenever he goes. There is a kind of clamor. And we in the northeast or Bengal, since I'm located here, we are not accustomed to that kind of thing. Especially northeast, that kind of untouchability had never existed. But in other parts of India, as I am aware, just this recent case that is ongoing now. So, it's very, very difficult, unfortunate, and inhuman. Now, he faces all this. Now, in between, what happens is that he has a sister, Sohini, who goes to collect water for him from the well. And Anand is very meticulously shown that even water a Dalit cannot take out on his or her own. Some upper caste man or women, out of mercy, has to give her water from the well, otherwise the well will be polluted. Just imagine that kind of dehumanization. So there a priest, Kalinath, he offers Sohini some water, but that also on the condition that she should come to his house, near the temple is the temple priest, do some cleaning. And then you see, it is like the typical, formula movies. When she goes there, Kalinath had taken some interest in her, physical interest. He advances, he makes sexual advances on her, Sohini. When she rejects, he starts shouting that I am polluted, and all people gather. And Baka was passing by that place, and he also goes, and then all fury indictment are levied on the brother and the sister, to him for entering the temple, and then all these things. So the hypocrisy of the upper caste, the priestly caste, or other upper caste, that has been exposed. So Baka comes home very sad, threatened. He wanted to act, but he cannot act. So in a way, they are colonized within the colonized. There are a group of colonized within the greater colonized. So there are colonies within colonies. So that is why I often talk about intersectionality. Now he comes and tells his father Lakha, of his hatred of the upper caste. And the father says, he gives him the other point of view, that it was an upper caste doctor who had saved Baka's life when he was young. So not all upper castes are bad. But then Baka is not satisfied. So these stray incidents, we have this general tendency here to generalize. I spoke in other videos. So if one upper caste man is bad, all are bad. If one is good, then we tend to think all. There should be case to case. General trends are there, but we should be discerning. And of course, the general trend was not in favor of Baka. So we must admit that in spite of what his father might have said, upper castes did not mete out a good treatment, basic human treatment to Baka. So it keeps going on like that in different places. They play hockey, and then a child is wounded after a fight. Adopts the hockey, and he carries the child back to his home. Baka, his mother shrieks that why did you pollute my son, so on and so forth. You can just, it's very difficult to imagine. Though we have some kind of untouchability today due to COVID, but there also the court, our judiciary has advised that we should not use the term social distancing, because we have this tenor of, social otherization. So better term is physical distancing. Anyway, so all human beings are one. That is the basic value. We are all equal. We are born equal, and then privileged people make us unequal or unequal. Now then, towards the end of the novel, now these are the problem part. He is not accepted by upper caste. He is sort of otherized by the upper caste. So he is representative of all of his class in a way, though he is an individualized character also. Now, what is the solution? The novel, it seems, gives three kinds of solutions. One is conversion. In Christianity, there is no caste politics, apparently. So, one is becoming Christian and losing one's caste. That he takes some move towards that, but then the wife of the Sahib who wants to introduce him to is equally antagonized to his caste, and that moves him further away from the church possibility. So the first thing is gone. If you have watched, I referred to it in my class or in some other lecture, there was a serial Satyameva Jayate, in which it was shown how untouchability is practiced in contemporary India. If you remember my lectures on Tagore's single most important objection to Indian nationalism was that we do not have common birthright in India. Every Indian cannot marry every other Indian. So it is, though legally now it is allowed, but the society doesn't allow. So how can we be one? Anyway, so the one solution of Christianity gone. The other is Mahatma Gandhi, and on this I need to take a separate class or upload a separate video. There is a detailed Gandhi appears in that novel. In many of the novels of that period, Gandhi was a character, either by direct presence or by indirect reference. Kanthapura, for example, indirect reference, waiting for the Mahatma, all these things. So here Gandhi comes and gives a speech where he criticizes and castigates the casteist practices of Indian society. As you all know, Gandhi's very important agenda was removal of untouchability, that is Harijan. He called them Harijan, God's people. So he gives detailed speech that it is not there in Hindu scripture and all that, these are later, all those kinds of things, human dignity. And he says that whoever thinks that that some other person is unclean, well, if the other person chants God's names, Hari, etc., and he becomes clean because God's name has all the power. So Gandhi gives a solution from within the tradition, whereas that another solution was becoming Christian. But it seems none of these is acceptable to Anand. The better solution for Anand is that a poet there refers that the untouchable can only become touchable by losing his profession. By losing his profession, he loses his caste also. Now, how would he lose his profession? By machines, because the job that made the untouchable is the cleaning of human toilets. So with the invention and coming of modern European flush toilets, or as we say sanitary toilets, that job will no longer be existing, so that they will automatically be co-opted to the mainstream society, and that way untouchability will go. So these are in a way kind of three solutions. Arnold's sympathy lies as a Marxist and a progressive writer with the last one, because Gandhi's solution also has a lot of problems, for which initially Tagore had differences with Gandhi and later Ambedkar. Gandhi always said that it is a bit paradoxical that the problem was not in caste, if I may say so, but in casteism. So he maintained Varnashram. He believed Varna and caste, whether they are same or not same, there are a lot of discourses. In brief, it is said that Varna is based on one's profession, which is open to choice. Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra according to one's work. So that was the Varna system. Anyone who chooses one profession would become of that caste. But caste is when Varna becomes hereditary. So Gandhi meant that the Varna may remain but not caste. But actually he possibly meant that caste should remain without casteism. So Ambedkar, on valid grounds, he rejected that as long as you have casteism is there. So I actually agree with what Ambedkar said. And I say the same thing about gender, slightly influenced by Butler. So long as we remain within gender, men, women, these categories, it is next to impossible to have equality, because the gender itself is a discourse which is based on inequality. So the best thing is to move outside gender, just human or biological being, no man, no woman. Because as long as man, women or third gender are there, no matter how much soever you talk about equality among them, the load of the words, the load of the tradition is so much that somewhere some differences will remain. So become post-gender, as I said a lot. So Ambedkar also spoke about annihilation of the caste. That he directly does not bring Ambedkar here. By that time he had not become that prominent also, but Ambedkar's views are in a way anticipated or taken care of by by some views which oppose Gandhi's view of Varna. So I think all of you would read the novel The Untouchable, or Untouchable rather, and then it will be beneficial for us to understand how we became what we became, and will take us a long way in breaking the structures and strictures of casteism and caste-based oppressions in India. Thank you.